Welcome to the Ultimate Music Theory Basic Rudiments Lesson 3. In Lesson 2, you learned about accidentals. A sharp, flat, or natural sign written in front of a note alters the pitch of the note by one chromatic half step or semitone. In Lesson 3, you'll learn about another type of half step or semitone, and also about whole steps or whole tones, and enharmonic equivalence. As you recall from Lesson 2, the word chromatic means the same letter name. A chromatic half step above C is C sharp. The word diatonic, which starts with the letter D, means a different letter name. A diatonic semitone above C is called D flat. A diatonic semitone is written as an interval of a second. So an interval is the distance between two notes. A second is the distance from a line note to a space note, or a space note to a line note. Each black key on the keyboard has two names. For example, C sharp is also called D flat. When writing notes that are the same pitch using different or neighboring letter names, such as C sharp and D flat, they are called enharmonic equivalents. For example, a chromatic half step below G is G flat. A diatonic half step below G is F sharp. Now, G flat and F sharp are called enharmonic equivalents. They are the same pitch written with notes using different letter names. There are 4 white keys that have 2 names, and these are enharmonic equivalents, and they are E sharp or F, F flat or E, B sharp or C, and C flat or B. We've learned that a half step is the shortest distance in pitch between two notes. A whole step, also called a whole tone or sometimes just called a tone, is equal to 2 half steps or semitones. On the keyboard, we can see that a whole step is the distance from one key to another key with one key, black or white, in between them. For example, F up to G, B flat up to C, or G sharp up to A sharp, and so on. A whole step is an interval written as a second. The first line or space note is counted as 1. For example, C to D is an interval of a second. Remember that a half step is also called a semitone, and a whole step is also called a whole tone. So here's a UMT tip. When identifying half steps, whole steps, and enharmonic equivalents, use the keyboard as a guide. For example, when completing the exercise number 4, as seen on page 32 in the Basic Rudiments workbook, let's name each of the following intervals of a second as DS for diatonic semitone, WT for whole tone, EE for enharmonic equivalent. Now, an interval of a first will be labeled as CS for chromatic semitone. So, using the keyboard, we see that E to F is a diatonic semitone, so DS. Diatonic means different letter name. Then E to F flat is an enharmonic equivalent. Same pitch, written using different letter names. E to E sharp is a chromatic semitone, CS. Now that's an easy one to remember because chromatic means the same letter name. So it's always an interval of a first. And finally, E to F sharp is a whole tone because there's 2 semitones in between. The distance of 2 semitones is always a whole tone. Now we use neighboring letter names, so E's neighboring note is called F sharp and is an interval of a second. In our UMT Basic Rudiments Lesson 3, we learned about 2 types of semitones, chromatic and diatonic, as well as whole tones and enharmonic equivalents. Today, you're going to learn how to play a fun game called Slap. So take all the flashcards with the dynamic terms learned in Lesson 1 on page 13, and all the flashcards with the style and performance terms learned in Lesson 2 on page 26. Now, if you haven't got your flashcards out yet, these terms are on the very first page of the flashcards at the back of the book. So we're going to spread out the flashcards on your desk and ask students to slap the correct term as you give them the definition. Now, here's a look at one teacher playing slap with her students. This is Sam and Jay, so have a look.
Today we're going to play dynamic slap. Are you guys ready?
Ready. Ready.
Fly swatters are ready? Good. I spy with my little eye a dynamic that means play loud. I think that was Sam. Good job, Sam. Okay, on you ready? I spy with my little eye, up here. I spy with my little eye something that means play moderately loud. Good job, Jay. Okay.
Remind students to study the new flashcards for the terms on page 33 and 34 on tempo, changes in tempo, and articulation for the next game of slap. Watch for our next video in a few days. Ultimate Music Theory, Basic Rudiments, Lesson 4. You'll learn whole tones and semitones and how they are the building blocks of the major scale pattern. I'm also going to show you a really cool way to remember how to write the major keys around the outside of the circle of fifths in less than 1 minute. Till next time, teach with passion.